After an injury-riddled and slow start to the season, the Vegas Golden Knights have fought through the adversity and have once again found themselves atop the Pacific Division. Today, we're going to talk about 3 reasons why Vegas is a very real threat for the Stanley Cup, and one big question I still have about the team. Let's go. Hey everybody, so we are continuing our Stanley Cup Contender series, and today we're taking a look at the Vegas Golden Knights, who once again find themselves in first place in the Pacific Division. That certainly has not come easy, as Vegas got off to a very slow start this season, had a lot of injury issues early on, are still dealing with injury issues, but have gotten their game on track and have played very, very well of late. And that's really allowed them to climb up the standings very quickly and perch themselves right back atop the Pacific. So there's a lot to get into here. We'll get started looking at Vegas and their season so far. As I said, they're currently first place in the Pacific. 35 games played, 22-12-1 record for the Golden Knights. That leads them to 45 points on the season so far and a plus 20 goal differential, which is obviously a very good number there. 3 reasons why Vegas, to me, is a true contender and really is a threat to win the Stanley Cup this season. Right out of the gate is that they are a veteran team with a ton of experience. And not just a lot of experience in the NHL, but a lot of playoff experience in the NHL as well. I mean, this is a team with a lot of players who have played a lot of playoff games. They, as a team, have played a lot of playoff games. I mean, this is a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year in 2018. They've been to the playoffs every year since. They've been to multiple conference finals. They haven't won the Stanley Cup yet, but they've gone deep into the playoffs quite a few times already in overall what's a very short history of the organization, as 2017-2018 was their first season of existence. They've been successful out of the gate, and they've played a lot of playoff games, and they've got a lot of players that have played a lot of playoff games. They do have a couple Stanley Cup winners on the team. Alex Pietrangelo won the Cup with the Blues, and Alec Martinez won Cups with the Los Angeles Kings. But even other guys that maybe don't have a Stanley Cup ring also have quite a bit of playoff experience. Brayden McNabb's played a lot of playoff games over his career. Shea Theodore's played a lot of playoff games. William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith. These are guys that have been with Vegas for a long time. They've got a lot of playoff games. Chandler Stevenson, he actually was in Washington when they won in 2018. Chandler Stevenson's got experience. Obviously Alec Martinez, Max Pacioretty's played a lot of playoff games. The list goes on and on. I mean, I could go through a lot of their roster and it's all the same. I mean, they've got a lot of guys with a lot of playoff experience and a lot of playoff games under their belt. That generally helps you in playoff time. Guys that know what to expect, know what it takes. And while Vegas themselves haven't been able to completely finish off the full Stanley Cup run yet, they've got a lot of veteran experience in that lineup, and that is going to help them come playoff time. Another thing they have in that lineup is a lot of top-end talent. On paper, this roster, when it's healthy, is absolutely one of the best in the NHL. Their top 6 is outstanding. Their top 4 defense is outstanding. Robin Lehner is a very good goaltender. Now, can he be a Stanley Cup winning goaltender? That remains to be seen. But he's a very good goaltender. And they've got a lot of high-end talent on this team. And it's a lot of the guys that I just talked about who also happen to have a lot of experience. Guys like Max Pacioretty. Guys like Alex Pietrangelo and Alec Martinez on the back end, William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, Mark Stone, now Jack Eichel coming into the fold. He hasn't played a game yet this year or for Vegas, but he's coming back from surgery and should be good to go later in the year and be able to play in the second half of the season and into the playoffs and whatnot. There's some more talent coming into your lineup. They're a very talented team and a really, really good roster on paper when they have everybody available. Now, We're going to talk more about the having everybody available in a little bit because that's a big question. But when this team is firing on all cylinders, they have one of the best lineups in the NHL. There's no doubt about that. They've got a lot of very talented, very good players, and the kinds of players that you can win a lot of playoff games with, win playoff series with, and potentially go and win a Stanley Cup. So that I don't question with Vegas at all. I do think they have a roster good enough to win a Stanley Cup when they're healthy. And the last real reason or big reason that I see for them to be a real threat this year is that they can score with anybody. And we've noticed that with a lot of these Western Conference teams that I've talked about. They're high-scoring teams, and it looks like that's what it's going to take to win in the West because a lot of the other top West teams are the same way. They're scoring 3.54 goals for per game this season. That is fourth best in the NHL. So obviously a very, very high-scoring team here, good offense, and right along with the rest of the Western Conference because they're fourth highest-scoring team in the NHL. Two other teams from the top five also come from the Western Conference with Colorado and Minnesota. And honestly, altogether, the Vegas Golden Knights statistically as a team remind me a lot of the Minnesota Wild. I think they get to that point differently. I don't think they're built the same way, but the end result ends up being very similar to the Minnesota Wild. They're a high-scoring team that's one of the biggest scorers in the NHL, but they also give up a lot of goals, just like Minnesota does. They've got a good goaltender who might be one step down from the top goalies in the league, similar to Minnesota, and they don't have great special teams. Their special teams are very good, kind of middle of the road, adequate special teams, but not great. But, numbers-wise, Minnesota was a top 5 scoring team in the league, scoring over 3.5 goals for per game. Vegas, over 3.5 goals for per game, a top 5 scoring team in the NHL. Minnesota also gives up a lot of goals, over 3 goals against per game. Vegas also gives up a lot of goals, over 3 goals against per game. And then very middle of the road special teams. The final numbers, even though I don't think the teams get there the same way, the end result between Minnesota and Vegas, they end up being very similar teams. And Colorado is also kind of similar as well. So a lot of these other, big Western Conference contenders are all kind of the same when it comes to their style and how they're doing this year from a team standpoint as far as offense versus defense and where everything's at. It's just interesting that this kind of seems to be what it's going to be like in the West. Is you're going to have maybe not quite as good goaltending as the Eastern Conference. You're going to have higher scoring games, higher scoring teams, and it's going to be interesting to see if that dynamic continues through the playoffs as well and into the playoffs, and if playoff time things tighten up a bit, or if the Western Conference kind of stays this, higher scoring, run and gun, big kind of hockey that we've seen so far. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But switching over now to the big question, I mentioned this earlier, there's multiple questions I have with the Vegas Golden Knights. There's certainly not just one, but really jumping out to me is their health. And can this team stay healthy enough to win a Stanley Cup? Because like I was talking about on their contending side, when this team is healthy, when this roster is intact, it's one of the best overall rosters in the NHL. And they're an extremely good, talented team, but they've had a lot of problems this year keeping that roster intact and keeping guys on the ice. There's been a lot of injury issues with Vegas, and I really do question, can Vegas survive 2 months, 4 rounds of playoffs, all the way through the Stanley Cup Finals and keep a healthy enough team to actually win a Stanley Cup? Because when you look at the guys that have missed time for the Golden Knights this year, out just right now, Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty are on IR. Alec Martinez is on IR. Jack Eichel hasn't returned yet from his surgery. Those guys are all out right now. Earlier in the year, Alex Pietrangelo missed time. Shea Theodore's missed time. William Karlsson missed time, and I mean the list goes on and on and on with Vegas and the number of man games that they've missed this year and just how injured they've been this season. And it's not just been third and fourth line replaceable type guys. It's been big players: Mark Stone, Pacioretty, Karlsson, Pietrangelo, Theodore Martinez on the back end. Like, it is not just missing players out of the lineup, but they've been missing very important key players out of the lineup a lot this year. And their overall health is a big question mark for me, because I don't know if Vegas can keep that group together for 2 months of big boy grind and pound it out, playoff style hockey that you get in the NHL postseason. They'd have to survive 4 rounds of that without guys getting seriously injured and missing significant time. Just seems like for Vegas, somebody is always out, and it's always, at least a couple big name players are injured. And that's something that they've certainly struggled with this season and is a big question for me heading into the postseason, as well as some other things. I mean, they do give up a lot of goals, similar to Minnesota, so I do worry if they can keep the puck out of their net enough to be a true Stanley Cup level team. I don't know if Robin Lehner is, a good enough goaltender to be a number 1 Stanley Cup leading goalie. Again, we haven't seen it. Fleury played most of the playoffs last year. Is Lehner good enough to take them all the way? Or is he just a good goaltender that can get you to the mid-round somewhere, maybe a conference final, but that's kind of it? Or is he good enough to actually go all the way? There are certainly questions here with the Vegas Golden Knights, but my biggest one is just their health, because if they have the lineup, they have the roster, they have the talent to be a full-on contender and maybe even a favorite for the Stanley Cup. But if those guys aren't in the lineup, or if they're missing 2 or 3 of those guys out of the lineup, that's going to be a big, big hit, especially in the playoffs when you're playing the best of the best. And, there are no easy games. You're playing very tough opponents every single game in the postseason. That's something that I really think could end up holding the Vegas Golden Knights back, but we'll have to wait and see. So all in all, Vegas, very, very strong team again this year. Very good hockey team, and built well, but there are still certainly some questions. They score a lot of goals, but they give up a lot of goals. Is their goaltending good enough? Special teams are very middle of the road, mediocre special teams for them. That could end up coming back to bite them a little bit come playoff time. And then obviously the big question is the health. I mean, this team struggled with so many injuries this year. It's had a lot of guys out of the lineup, and not just players, but key players missing significant time. I really do question whether they could make it through an entire postseason, 4 rounds, all the way through to the Stanley Cup Finals, without losing at least a couple big-name players that could really set them back in their attempt to win a Stanley Cup. So health is certainly a big question for me as well. But I do think Vegas is a contender. I think they've been a perennial contender for the last few years. They're still a very talented team. They're still a threat to win. They're just going to have to see if they can put it all together at the right time. And again, that's something that remains to be seen moving forward. But that's what I've got on the Vegas Golden Knights. Thank you guys so much for watching. And with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, memberships, merchandise store, and donation links are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.